I'm Clara Sterling, 33 years old, a librarian at the Willow Grove Public Library in Portland, Oregon, and I've spent the last 8 years hiding a secret that would turn my family's world upside down. It was April 10, 2025, and I stood in the rare book section of the library, the air heavy with the scent of old paper and polished wood, my fingers tracing the spine of a 19th century poetry collection I'd been cataloging all morning. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows, casting a warm glow over the shelves I'd tended with love for nearly a decade. This library was my sanctuary, a place where I could be myself, away from the judgment of my family, who saw me as the quiet Sterling, the one who'd chosen books over ambition. The silence was broken by a voice I knew too well, sharp and dripping with condescension. "Still hiding in your little book cave, Clara?" My brother, Nathan, leaned against a shelf, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the muted tones of my world, his smirk as familiar as it was infuriating. I looked up, keeping my expression neutral as I slid the book back into its protective sleeve. "Hello, Nathan," I said, my voice steady despite the sting of his words. "I didn't expect you here." My cardigan felt suddenly frumpy next to his polished perfection, but I didn't let it show. He adjusted his cufflinks, a flashy gesture that screamed money, his eyes scanning the library with disdain. "Mom sent me," he said, his tone clipped. "She's worried you'll embarrass us at their anniversary party tonight. Though, looking around, I'd say it's already too late." The library, my haven, seemed to shrink under his gaze, but I met his eyes without flinching. "I'll be there," I assured him, standing to my full height, though even in flats he towered over me, a fact he never let me forget. "And I'll dress appropriately." His grin widened, all teeth and no warmth. "See that you do. It's a big night, I've got news, and Dad's business friends will love it." I nodded, letting him think I was impressed, my hands lingering on the book sleeve, the small click of it closing a sound that grounded me. Nathan didn't notice the calm that masked something sharper beneath. He never did. "Don't trip over a book on your way out," he tossed over his shoulder as he sauntered off, leaving me alone again. I exhaled, already counting the hours until I'd shatter his illusions, until I'd show them all who I really was. Nathan lingered by the stacks a moment longer, his gold watch catching the light as he turned back to me. "Bought my 4th company this year," he said, his voice thick with pride. "Sterling Ventures is a powerhouse now. Dad says I'm the real deal, a true businessman." I nodded, my hands tightening just enough to betray me if he'd been paying attention. He wasn't. "That's wonderful," I said, the words smooth as the polished wood beneath my fingers. "Congratulations." He didn't bother making his thanks sincere, just tilted his head like he was sizing up a failure. "You know, Clara, there's still time to join the real world," he said, gesturing at the shelves. "I could use someone to organize our corporate archives, at least then you'd be useful with all this knowledge." The way he said it made it sound like a flaw, a stain I couldn't wash out. I smiled, thinking of the encrypted laptop in my office safe, the meetings I'd taken under a name he'd never guess. "I'm happy where I am," I told him, letting the words hang between us like a challenge he didn't hear. He shrugged, already turning away. "Your loss. 7 sharp tonight, and Clara? Try not to bring any books this time." I watched him go, his footsteps echoing off the hardwood floor, the library settling back into its hush, but my pulse racing with anticipation. I waited 10 minutes after Nathan left, long enough to ensure he wouldn't double back, before locking my office door. The space was modest, walls lined with books, a desk worn from years of use, the perfect picture of a librarian's life, exactly as I intended. No one noticed the security system humming quietly in the corner, or the fact that my outdated desktop hid a custom-built core that could rival most corporate servers. I opened my safe, pulled out the encrypted laptop and powered it up, the screen flickering to life with 3 video call windows, Singapore, Berlin, and Los Angeles. My real life, the one I'd hidden for 8 years, snapped into focus. "Good afternoon, Ms. Everett," said Elise Carter, my assistant at 30, her voice crisp and professional, sharper than most executives I'd met. "The Tanaka acquisition is ready for your final review." I scanned the documents on my screen, numbers and terms I'd memorized months ago, my mind already calculating the next move. "Thank you, Elise," I said, my voice steady. "Has legal cleared everything?" She nodded, her expression all business. "Yes, ma'am, the terms are airtight. We can move whenever you're ready." I glanced at my watch. 5 hours until the party, plenty of time. "Schedule the signing for tomorrow morning," I instructed. "And ensure the press release is set to go out at 9 a.m. sharp." Elise hesitated, her brow furrowing slightly. "Are you sure about the timing?" "It's bold." I thought of Nathan's smug face, the years of him dismissing me as the bookish Sterling who'd never amount to much. "Yes," I said, a quiet edge in my voice. "Tomorrow morning will be perfect." I ended the call and leaned back, staring at the empire I'd built in the shadows. Everett Global Holdings, no relation to Nathan's Sterling ventures despite the family echo, was one of the world's largest private equity firms, a powerhouse I'd created while shelving books, a cover I didn't just tolerate, I loved. Who'd suspect a librarian of reshaping global markets? The salon was empty when I arrived, a perk of owning the building and keeping a standing private appointment. My stylist, Nadia Brooks, one of the few who knew my secret, greeted me with a knowing smile. "The usual?" she asked, gesturing to a chair. "Something more formal today," I said, settling in. "Family event." She nodded, her eyes gleaming with understanding. "The famous Sterling anniversary party." Nathan was in earlier, bragging to everyone who'd listen. I smirked, pulling out my secure phone to check emails. "I'm sure he was." As Nadia worked, I scrolled through updates on the Tanaka acquisition. By tomorrow, Everett Global Holdings would own one of Japan's largest renewable energy firms, the same one Nathan had been chasing for months. "Your brother mentioned he's buying some big company," Nadia said, catching my eye in the mirror. Couldn't stop talking about it. I kept my expression neutral. "He's trying to buy it," I said, my voice calm. "There's a difference." She raised an eyebrow but didn't push, her hands moving deftly through my hair. "You didn't?" I smiled, just enough to keep her guessing. "Let's just say tomorrow's headlines will be interesting." Nadia finished, my hair now sleek and elegant, fit for the part I'd play tonight. The dress waited at home, a deep sapphire number I'd had tailored to perfection, not flashy but expensive in the way that whispered power. I'd look like the Clara they expected, the quiet sister making an effort, but beneath the surface I was a billionaire ready to rewrite their story. I pulled up to the Sterling family estate in my Lexus, the engines hum a soft contrast to the roar of Porsches and Mercedes lining the circular drive. April 10, 2025. Evening shadows stretched across the manicured lawn, the mansion ablaze with lights, a glittering display of wealth and status. I'd chosen the car carefully, nice enough to avoid Mom's size, modest enough to dodge questions about my librarian's salary. Our butler, James Carter, who'd been with the family since I was a child, met me at the door, his nod warm but formal. "Miss Everett," he said, his voice a quiet comfort. "Your parents are in the grand hall." I stepped inside, the murmur of wealth washing over me, crystal clinking, a string quartet weaving through the air, the scent of expensive perfume mingling with the flowers Mom had ordered from Paris. Mom spotted me first. Evelyn Sterling, 57 and the epitome of elegance, glided over in a gown that cost more than my monthly rent, or so she thought. "Darling, you look presentable," she said, her air kiss brushing my cheek, her highest praise considering she'd never forgiven me for choosing books over business. "Happy anniversary, Mom," I replied, returning the gesture. "You look stunning." She did, her grace a shield against time, but her eyes held a flicker of disappointment as they took in my sapphire dress. Dad's voice boomed across the hall before she could say more. There's my girl. Victor Sterling, 60 and already flushed from champagne, waved me over to his circle of business friends. I wove through the crowd, dodging polite nods and air kisses, the whispers about my little job trailing behind me like a shadow. Edward Langston, all gray hair and arrogance, grinned as I reached them. Still playing with those books, Clara? His tone made it clear what he thought of that, his chuckle inviting the others to join in. Someone has to preserve knowledge, I said, keeping my smile mild, my dress catching the light just enough to fit their expectations. They laughed, indulgent, like I was a child with a quaint hobby, and I let them, knowing their laughter would turn to shock by morning. Party hummed along, a sea of tailored suits and glittering jewels, until Nathan decided it was his moment to shine. I stood near the grand fireplace, sipping sparkling water when he raised his glass and called out, "Everyone!" The room quieted, heads turning to my brother, 36 and basking in the attention, his suit sharper than the one he'd worn in the library, his gold watch flashing as he gestured. "I'd like to make an announcement," he said, his voice carrying over the quartet's last notes. I leaned against the mantel, watching him play the Prince of Sterling Ventures, the golden child who could do no wrong. As some of you know, Sterling Ventures has been expanding rapidly this year, he began, pausing for effect. Today, I'm thrilled to announce we're on the verge of our biggest acquisition yet. By next week, we'll own Tanaka Energy. The room erupted. Claps, cheers, Dad beaming like Nathan had invented the sun, Mom dabbing her eyes with a silk handkerchief, her pride a quiet echo of Dad's roar. A true businessman, just like his father, Victor bellowed, clapping Nathan on the back. I sipped my drink, the bubbles sharp against my tongue, the only sound I made as Nathan continued. The deal's not quite final, but my sources say it's just a matter of time. Papers are ready to sign. More applause followed, a wave of congratulations rolling toward him as he soaked it in, shaking hands, accepting praise like it was his birthright. Nathan's gaze landed on me, sharp and smug, his voice thick with condescension as he addressed me directly. "What do you think, little sister?" he asked, the room's attention shifting to me, the bookish Sterling who'd never measure up. "Ready to admit you backed the wrong horse?" Crowd tittered, eyes flicking to me, their amusement a familiar sting I'd learned to ignore. I met his stare, calm as the library at dawn, my voice steady as I replied, "I think you shouldn't count your chickens before they hatch." He laughed, loud and dismissive, the room following his lead, a chorus of indulgence that grated against my nerves. "Always so cautious, Clara," he said, shaking his head. "That's why you'll never be more than what you are, hiding in your library while we build empires." I raised my glass slightly, a toast he didn't understand, my mind already on the press release set for morning, the moment I'd turn his victory into a footnote. Dinner was served in the grand dining room, a masterpiece of oak and candlelight, the table set with china older than the house itself. I took my seat at the far end, a spot Mom had chosen to keep me from the important guests, the first course arriving. A delicate consommé I barely tasted, as Nathan held court near Dad, regaling the table with tales of his business prowess. I kept quiet, spooning broth, nodding politely when someone remembered I was there, the air thick with subtle insults I'd learned to let slide. Beatrice Langston, seated beside me, leaned in, her perfume sharp and cloying. "I just don't understand," she said, her voice low, pitying. "You were so bright in school, you could have done anything. Why waste your life with books?" She shook her head, her pearl earrings glinting. I set my spoon down, considering her question, knowing that in 12 hours everything would change. "Books are never a waste," I said simply. "They teach us things aren't always what they seem." She frowned, clearly disappointed, and turned back to her soup. Across the table, Nathan's voice rose, recounting a deal he'd closed in Singapore. "The CEO didn't know what hit him," he said, grinning as Dad laughed, a little too loud from the champagne. Mom smiled tightly, her gaze flitting to me now and then like she was checking I wouldn't ruin the night. "Clara, do try to mingle later," she called down the table. The Langstons brought their son, such a catch. I nodded, biting back a retort. They'd been pushing eligible bachelors at me for years, as if a husband could fix my failure. Edward Langston chimed in from Dad's end. Still at that library, eh? What's the pay like these days? His chuckle invited others to join, a familiar hum of amusement. Enough, I said, my voice mild, thinking of the estate I'd never let them see. It suits me. Nathan caught my eye, smirking. Suits you to hide, you mean, he said, and the table laughed again, softer this time. I sipped my water, tasting the victory they couldn't imagine, the anticipation building in my chest as I counted down the hours. As dessert arrived, lavender macarons with gold leaf, Nathan stood, glass raised, his voice commanding the room's attention once more. A toast, he announced, to Mom and Dad, who taught me what success looks like, and to my sister, who, well, proves not everyone's cut out for the family business. The room chuckled politely, their laughter a dagger I'd grown used to, but I lifted my glass, meeting his gaze, thinking of the press release set to drop in 12 hours, the moment they'd choke on that laughter. The party thinned out by the dessert table, the quartet packing up as guests drifted toward the bar or the exit. I stood there, picking at a macaron, when Nathan sauntered over, his tie loosened, a champagne flute dangling from his fingers. Enjoying the party? He asked, his voice slick with smugness. I popped the macaron in my mouth, letting the sweetness melt before I answered. It's lovely, I said, keeping my tone light. Mom and Dad must be so proud. His chest puffed out, his watch glinting as he straightened his tie. They are, he said, leaning closer. Would have been nice if both their kids amounted to something, though. His eyes flicked over me, taking in the sapphire dress, elegant, sure, but not his kind of flash. I selected another macaron, rolling it between my fingers, unbothered. You know, Nathan, I said, examining the treat like it held secrets, success isn't always about making the most noise. He snorted, loud enough to turn a few heads. No? Tell that to my bank account. How much does a librarian make these days, anyway? I glanced at my Manolo Blahnik heels, a quiet indulgence he'd never notice. Enough to buy these shoes, I said, meeting his gaze. He blinked, then laughed, dismissing it. Right, you're good with money, should have guessed. He downed his champagne in one gulp, the glass clinking as he set it on the table. Well, this has been fun, but I should mingle. Big day tomorrow, the Tanaka deal won't close itself. He grinned like he'd already signed the papers and turned to go. I pulled my phone from my clutch, the screen lighting up as I typed a quick text to Elise. Everything ready for morning? Her reply buzzed back instantly, all set. Press release at 9 a.m. sharp. Want the final numbers? I tapped back, no need. I'll see them in the papers. Slipping the phone away, I watched Nathan work the room, shaking hands, laughing too loud, his confidence a house of cards I was about to topple. He thought tomorrow was his triumph, his name in bold print, but I knew better. I finished the macaron, savoring the subtle lavender, the bittersweet edge mirroring the victory I'd taste in the morning. Clock above the mantel read 11:30. I said my goodbyes, enduring one last round of pitying smiles. Do consider Nathan's offer, dear, Mom whispered, her cheek cool against mine. I drove home in the Lexus, the estate's lights fading in my rear view, a smile playing on my lips as I thought of the storm I'd unleash by morning. I stepped into the library at 8 a.m. sharp, April 11, 2025, my sensible shoes tapping against the hardwood floor, the regulars nodding their hellos, same as always, oblivious to the storm I'd unleashed. I kept my routine for 8 years, and today was no different on the surface, but beneath, everything had changed. Elise waited in my office, her tablet glowing as I locked the door behind me, her voice steady as she updated me. Everything's ready, she said quietly. Lawyers are in Singapore, press release goes out in 45 minutes. I set my bag down, powered up the encrypted laptop, and nodded. Any word from Nathan's team? She smirked, a rare crack in her professional demeanor. They're still expecting to close Tanaka this morning. His lawyers are setting up now. I smiled, imagining his face when the rug slipped out from under him, the moment he realized he'd been outplayed. At 8:55, my private line rang. "Miss Everett," said Mr. Tanaka's translator. "Everyone's in position." "Excellent," I replied. "Let's proceed." Signatures flashed across my screen, a blur of confirmation sealing Everett Global Holdings' ownership of Tanaka Energy, patents, subsidiaries, and all. By 9 a.m. it was done. Elise tapped her tablet. "Press release out now." I pulled up news sites, watching the story break. Mystery buyer acquires Tanaka Energy, Everett Global Holdings founder revealed. My phone buzzed, Nathan predictably first, his voice a roar of disbelief. "What the hell is this, Clara? Some sick joke?" I leaned back, calm as the shelves around me. "Good morning to you too, brother," I said, letting the words sink in. "I take it you've seen the news?" "This is impossible," he sputtered. "Everett Global Holdings, you're not the founder." "Actually, I am," I said, my voice steady. "Have been for 8 years. I understand your confusion, though. After all, I'm just a librarian, right?" Silence stretched, broken by papers rustling, his breath jagged. "But I had a deal. The paperwork was ready," he said, his voice cracking. "Was it?" I asked, my tone soft, innocent. "You might want to check the fine print. Tanaka's been mine for months." His voice broke, a mix of anger and disbelief. "Who's we? My team? My company? My empire?" "My empire," I said, pausing for effect. "The one I built while you mocked me." The line went dead, and I glanced at Elise, who hid a grin. "How long until my parents call?" She checked her watch. 3-2, right on cue. Mom's number flashed on my screen, her voice shrill enough to rattle the glass. "Clara Evelyn Sterling, what have you done?" I held the phone an inch from my ear, her panic crackling through. "Good morning, Mom," I said, unruffled. "I'm a bit busy. Can we discuss this over dinner?" "Dinner?" she shrieked. "Do you have any idea what's happening? Your father's phone won't stop ringing, the Langstons, the club. Everyone wants to know how our librarian daughter built a multi-billion-dollar company." I smiled, tracing a scratch on my desk. "I've got meetings all day," I said, which was true. Tanaka was just the start. "But I'd love to host you at my place tonight. Say 7 o'clock? Your place." Mom's suspicion dripped through the line. "You mean that tiny apartment by the library?" "No," I corrected. "My estate on Crestwood Lane. I'll text you the address." A long pause followed. "Crestwood Lane," she said, slower now. "That's the most exclusive neighborhood in the city." "Is it?" I replied, feigning surprise. "I hadn't noticed." "See you at 7. I hung up, exhaling as 8 years of secrets spilled into the open, the weight of my double life finally lifting. With the Tanaka acquisition sealed and the first press release out, I turned my attention to the next phase of my plan, a move I'd been orchestrating for months to solidify Everett Global Holdings' dominance. Elise tapped her tablet, her voice steady as she updated me. "Ready for phase 2? I nodded, my resolve unshaken. "Send the second press release." She tapped the screen, and I watched the next wave hit. Everett Global Holdings announces $60 billion merger with European green tech leaders. The merger had been in the works for months, timed to follow Tanaka like a 1-2 punch, ensuring the business world would reel and my family would face the daughter they dismissed in a new light. By tonight, the headlines would be inescapable, and I'd be at the center of it all, the librarian who'd rewritten the rules of power. I spent the day in meetings, strategy calls with my team in Singapore, interviews with financial journalists, discussions with my board about the merger's next steps. But I'd carved out dinner for my family, a moment I wanted them to witness, to see the view from the top, even if it bruised their pride first. The library remained my anchor, the familiar scent of books grounding me as I moved between my two worlds, the regulars oblivious to the headlines splashing my name across the globe. I shelved a book, its weight familiar in my hands, a quiet reminder of the life I loved, the life I'd never abandon, even as my empire grew. My phone buzzed with messages, congratulations from colleagues, requests for interviews, a few stunned texts from old friends who'd seen the news, but I kept my focus, knowing the real test would come tonight when I faced my family on my terms. At 7 p.m., the estate's gates opened and Nathan stormed in, his swagger replaced by fury, Mom and Dad trailing behind, shell-shocked, with James hovering, unsure how to reconcile this Clara with the one he'd known. The estate was a masterpiece of modern design, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city's glow, the dining room set with understated elegance, catered by a Michelin-starred restaurant I owned. "Welcome to my home," I said, gesturing to the view, the Portland skyline glittering below. "Drink." Nathan ignored the offer, his fists clenched, his voice a low growl. "How long have you been lying to us?" I moved to the bar, pouring a glass of Pinot Noir, my movements deliberate. "Lying?" I said, turning to face him. "I never lied. I'm a librarian, I love books. I just happen to run a global empire, too." Mom sank onto a velvet sofa, her voice trembling. "But why the deception? Why let us think you'd failed?" I sipped my drink, letting her question hang. "Maybe because you never looked past your assumptions," I said finally. "You saw the disappointing daughter who chose books over business. I let you." Dad stood by the window, staring at the skyline, his voice a murmur. "All this time, those mysterious acquisitions, that was you?" Nathan cut in, his tone flat, hard. "Everett Global Holdings, the shadow empire reshaping the market." I smiled, the weight of my secret now a badge of honor. "It has a nice ring, doesn't it? Though I prefer knowledge empire." "You taught me that, Dad, knowledge is power." He turned, and for the first time I saw respect in his eyes, a flicker of recognition that made the years of hiding worth it. "The Tanaka deal," he said slowly. "How long?" 8 months, I replied. "I've owned their subsidiaries for a year." Nathan never wondered why they kept delaying him. My brother's face flushed, then paled, the realization hitting him like a freight train. "You outplayed me," he said, his voice tight. "Not playing," I corrected. "Competing. Isn't that what you wanted?" Dinner arrived, and we sat, the tension thick as the sterling silver knives sliced through the silence. The meal a showcase of flavors I'd chosen to reflect the life I'd built, refined, understated, powerful. Nathan pushed food around his plate, his jaw tight, his voice low as he asked, "What now?" "Buy out Sterling Ventures." I nodded to Elise, who slid him a folder, her presence a quiet reminder of the team that had helped me build this empire. "A partnership," I said, my voice steady. "Your company has potential, mine has vision. Together we could build something bigger." Nathan blinked, incredulous. "You'd work with me?" "If you drop the ego and see value where you missed it," I replied, my gaze unwavering. Dad set down his fork, his voice thoughtful. "She's right, Nathan. This is a chance." Mom dabbed her eyes, her voice a whisper. "All those times we pitted you," I softened, the hurt in her words a reminder of the years I'd spent in their shadow. "It's time to focus on substance, not appearances," I said, my tone gentle but firm. By dessert, Nathan thawed, sketching ideas for our merger, his initial fury giving way to a grudging respect as he saw the potential in my offer. Dad watched me, pride replacing his old bluster, a shift I hadn't expected but welcomed. I'd built this alone, but maybe they could join me now if they learned the lesson I'd been teaching all along. That success wasn't about flash, but about substance, about the quiet power of knowledge applied with precision. The dinner ended with a tentative agreement, Nathan agreeing to meet with my team the following week to discuss the partnership, a a step toward a new dynamic I hadn't anticipated but was willing to explore. Mom and Dad lingered, their questions softer now, their curiosity genuine as they asked about my journey, the years I'd spent building Everett Global Holdings while shelving books. I answered honestly, sharing the challenges, the late nights, the moments of doubt, but also the joy of balancing my love for the library with my ambition, a duality that had shaped me into the woman I was. They left with a promise to return, to learn more, to be part of this new chapter, and for the first time I felt seen, not as the disappointing daughter but as the woman who'd outshone their expectations. I stood on the balcony after they left, the city lights stretching out before me, a testament to the empire I'd built, the life I'd created on my terms. The library would always be my home, my sanctuary, but now I could share my other world, the one I'd hidden for so long, with the family I'd once thought would never understand. It wasn't the ending I'd expected, but it was the one I'd earned, a balance of the life I loved and the power I'd claimed, a harmony I hadn't known I could achieve. The days that followed were a whirlwind: interviews, strategy sessions, board meetings to finalize the merger, the business world buzzing with the revelation of Everett Global Holdings founder, the librarian who'd rewritten the rules of power. But I kept my routine, arriving at the library each morning, nodding to the regulars in their usual spots, their quiet good mornings a comfort amidst the chaos. My face was splashed across headlines: Clara Sterling, librarian turned billionaire. But the library remained my anchor, the scent of books grounding me as I moved between my two worlds, the life I loved and the empire I'd built. I shelved a book, its weight familiar in my hands, a reminder of the passion that had carried me through, the passion I'd never abandon, no matter how big my empire grew. Nathan reached out the following week, his tone different now, less arrogant, more collaborative as we began discussions for the partnership. Sterling Ventures and Everett Global Holdings had the potential to create something groundbreaking, a synergy of his operational expertise and my strategic vision, a collaboration I hadn't thought possible but was now eager to explore. Mom and Dad visited the estate again, their questions more thoughtful, their pride evident as they toured the space, marveling at the life I'd built, the daughter they'd underestimated now a force they couldn't ignore. "We had no idea," Mom said, her voice soft as she stood by the window, the city glittering below. "We should have seen you." I nodded, the apology in her words a balm for the years of hurt. "You see me now," I said, and that was enough. I hired additional staff for the library, ensuring it could run smoothly even as my responsibilities at Everett Global Holdings grew, a decision that allowed me to balance my dual roles without sacrificing the work I loved. The regulars noticed the change, their curiosity piqued by the headlines, but they treated me the same, their respect for my work as a librarian unchanged, a reminder that I didn't have to choose between my passions, I could have both. Elise became my right hand, her efficiency a lifeline as we navigated the merger, her loyalty a testament to the team I'd built, the people who believed in me when my family hadn't. I stood in my office one evening, the library quiet around me, the city lights visible through the window, and felt a sense of peace I hadn't known I could achieve, a harmony between the life I'd hidden and the life I'd always loved. It's been a month since that morning, since I revealed my empire and turned my family's world upside down, since I showed them the power of knowledge applied with precision. I'm Clara Sterling, 33, from Portland, Oregon, and I've learned what success really means. Not the flash and noise my family once valued, but the quiet strength of building something real, something lasting on your own terms. That day in the library, when Nathan mocked me, I thought I'd always be the underestimated Sterling, the one who'd chosen books over ambition. But it was the moment I realized I could be both. The moment I claimed the life I'd built in the shadows, the life I'd earned through 8 years of secrets. Nathan and I are working together now, our partnership a tentative but promising step toward a new dynamic, a collaboration that could redefine both our companies, a testament to the value he'd once overlooked. Mom and Dad are part of my life in a way they never were before, their pride a quiet acknowledgement of the daughter they'd misjudged, their visits to the estate a chance to learn, to grow, to see me for who I am. The library remains my sanctuary, my home, the place where I'm still just Clara, the librarian who loves books, who finds joy in the weight of a volume in my hands, the scent of aged paper, the quiet of a space that's always been mine. Everett Global Holdings continues to grow, the merger a success, the business world watching my every move, but I've found a balance, a way to lead my empire while tending to the shelves, a harmony I never thought possible. I'm not the woman I was 8 years ago, the one who hid her ambition, who let her family's judgment define her. I'm stronger now, more certain, a librarian who built an empire, a woman who proved that knowledge is power, that success doesn't have to mean abandoning what you love. So I want to ask you, what's your story? Have you ever been underestimated, dismissed by those who should have seen your worth? Have you built something in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to shine? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear from you, to connect over the battles we've fought, the victories we've claimed. Maybe tell me your city too, so we can share in the places that have held our stories. I'm Clara, 33, from Portland, and I've turned my family's doubt into an empire, my love for books into a legacy. That press release broke their illusions, but it made me, and I'm just getting started.